Episode 8, the QCI show. We are here. We're excited. Chase has been traveling. Feedback has been rolling in. Exciting bit of feedback and a call out here. It's fantasy football season. Obviously, my team stinks. I auto draft all the time, but I'm in a league with Boston Properties, Cressa, CBRE, Foxfield, handful of guys.
Whoa.
They're upset at me because I did auto draft. I skipped the Zoom call. I auto drafted, and so I threw some money, side bets on a couple of guys, and their wager, if they win, guess what they want?
What?
Call out on the pod. Call out on the pod. After
some of them are doing some work in commercial real estate. I think boys, hit me up. Don't deal with him.
They're gonna have a lot more work to do, hopefully, because we got rate cups coming.
Hit me up, because this guy can't even ever get his computer to work. So my Friday schedule is always delayed because when I'm sitting here ready to do the pod, he can't even get the computer to work. I can't believe you get auto draft to work.
I'm a ThinkPad, IBM ThinkPad kind of guy. Moving to a Mac this weekend, everybody. Breaking news. All right, the anchor story today. Chase, let's talk about it. One of the biggest names in real estate had their investor day. We've talked about real estate being back. We've talked about good news and bad news and trends. There's data all over the place. CMBS delinquency rates, highest vacancy rates, and yet leasing is picking up. Let's walk through Brookfield a little bit. You want to hit the intro?
Yeah, Brookfield is just a compounding tank. So a couple of the highlights: over $1 trillion in their own capital base is about 180 billion. They delivered a 19% annualized return over 30 years. What a monster. Outperforming.
I got that beat in one more bit of news. But that's a monster for real estate.
Okay. Yeah, you do. Outperforming every major equity index over that time period. And they say, and this is not investment advice, but they say that the share price still trades at 35% discount to their internal plan, $66 compared to a $102 per share target. These guys are capital compounder. What a platform.
They're
officially declared the real estate's back.
So. I know. So let's talk about that. So why? So they said the return to office debate is over. It's over, finally. Thank God. I don't want to talk about RTO. I don't want to talk about return to office. I don't want to talk about on this show another Microsoft makes its company employees come back 4 days a week. Their take, the demand for space is soaring now. So as we're fifth quarter in of net positive absorption, because companies, they vastly underestimated the amount of space they were going to need coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, according to Brookfield. Now, Brookfield split in their super core, they have 34 trophy assets, 95% occupancy. Core plus, 57 centrally located assets with NOI growth, apparently 94% occupancy. And value add, they have 95 assets that are being repositioned or in lease up. And in the past year, they've had 15 million square feet leased or renewed at 11% spreads above their prior rent. Occupancy is good, growth's good, retail's performing well. These guys are just a machine. Now, they own good assets. And so I think we'll continue to beat this dead horse. But if you're in good product and you make good product, you're going to do really well. So it's the have and the have-nots. And when you know their operating business, the way they operate, they're very good operators. They take a platform approach. They're incredibly tenant-centric, and it shows in the lagging indicators. They talk a lot about the different asset classes. They talk a lot about AI in this investor presentation, which we'll throw for everybody to reference in the show notes and other places.
Yeah, they're dipping in and they're building AI factories, calling them the new railroads. You talk about updating infrastructure. We talked about railroads last week. AI infrastructure is incredibly important. There was a study out months ago, or was it a study? It was a talk. Eric Schmidt warned that 99% of electricity would be used to power AI. And that was a few months ago, but that's obviously challenging. But Brookfield sees a multi-decade, $7+ trillion spend opportunity in AI.
Yeah, and I think everybody's throwing the factory term out there to play that manufacturing wave, which I like.
I like that.
AI administration. We're making factories. It's a bunch of
data
boxes,
centers.
but
Data center.
Yeah, data centers, but I like AI factories. It sounds more industrial, which everybody's going for. But what I think they did that was so smart, and it's just look, some people are in a position to do it. They obviously are in terms of their scale, but it's the data is concrete that in the it's like the 4 to 12 quarters at the beginning of the cycle is where the returns get made. They've been playing offense. Clearly, they know what they're doing in terms of timing the cycle, and I think they're going to compound pretty well here in the years to come. So there, it was a bit of a mic drop presentation, and Bruce Flatt, the CEO, on down to the other executives, basically said the debate is over on return to office. They did reference our friends at JLL had a great report on kind of hybrid work that got a nice shout out in Brookfield's presentation to their investors, talking about Fortune 100 attendance. Over 50% of the Fortune 100 are back full time 5 days a week. And everybody else in the Fortune 100 has some sort of hybrid. So apparently the average is 3.8 days a week, up from 2.6 days a week in 2023. So I think the trend line is pretty obvious. I do think it's going to be really interesting to look at how other companies respond to what the Fortune 100 are doing and what the
With regards to what? Getting their employees back to the office? Is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
and being small and nimble, there's going to be a world, particularly the Fortune 100, where you have so many locations. They definitely still have distributed models, and people can go into different offices. But the fact that they're bringing people together, I do think you're going to start to get more questions from investors on, what your policy is. I think
Yeah.
people in person tend to perform, so I would expect that trend to continue.
Yeah, although on the other side of that, we are starting to see now there are some companies in tech specifically that are pulling back a little bit. They need to be small and nimble because they're losing some talent
Mm.
on their RTO sort of 5 day a week mandate. Now, that could be because the company might not be as strong. That could be because locations aren't necessarily ideal. But at the end of the day, these tech companies, it's all about a player density. It's all about talent. So you got
Yeah,
to do
and I
right.
talked to someone last week that's a growth tech investor, and I think a lot of folks in growth tech are still licking their wounds. I think a lot of companies were built for the last phase of technology. We see this across all kind of SaaS enterprise. You even see it in consumer, right? Where a lot of folks have to rethink their product from an AI perspective. And when you think about the talent wars, AI talent compared to it's no different than
Yeah.
the technology folks from the dot com that weren't as nimble, didn't have the skill sets if you're working in .NET, whatever, compared to cloud and SaaS kind of cycle. And now in AI, it's going to require a new set of skills from people in technology, but we're going to see them up level their skill set. There has been a lot of job loss in tech,
Yeah.
but these companies are booming. So I think we need to reskill people. And I do think that tech is going to continue to come back to the office because it's just so hard to innovate when you're not with people.
Yeah. One or two quick stats just on the Brookfield, which I don't know if you mentioned earlier, but that were just to me insane. 60 billion deployed in the last 5 years on real
Real
estate.
money.
So like
Real money.
we talk about oh, we talked about the what was it, Norway's sovereign wealth fund coming back, right? They've avoided commercial. They've avoided commercial for a while. Brookfield's just been quietly deploying $60 billion in capital over the last 5 years. That's going to generate immense returns if they've been buying right. My guess is they're buying low and selling high. They're Brookfield. The next
Yeah,
one is at 53 billion in cash flow from 26 to 30.
it's pretty good.
Yikes.
I believe an economist would say that's pretty good.
It's not bad.
Financial wizard.
It's not bad.
Mhm.
53 billion. Not as much as Larry Ellison made in one day, but we'll talk about that
Not
in a minute.
everybody can be Larry.
Not everybody could be Larry. All right, the quantum review this week. This one's exciting. We actually had some in the field reporting.
Sure.
In the field reporting. Chase, you went to the All In Summit again this year. This is what, third year you've gone?
Lucky number
Fourth year.
4. This is my 4th in a row that I went to the All In Summit. It's the pilgrimage that I make every year with my father. We go to the conference because he and I don't have hobbies outside of work, so we bond by going to the All In
So
Summit.
going to live podcasts.
Yeah,
That's what you guys do, your hobbies, or go to live podcasts.
that's basically what our hobby is. So you got to take his ticket last year because he had a hip replacement and he couldn't fly. So you've seen the crowd. I believe they brand themselves as the most influential conversations, and with the lineup that they had, it's hard to argue.
Yeah, so the All In podcast, I'm sure everybody knows the All In podcast, right? It's Jason Calacanis, David Friedberg, David Sachs, and Chamath Palihapitiya. I think I'm saying it right. They do this summit, and again, it's not a podcast. It really is the most influential leaders on the planet. Their content's already out, so I've started to listen to some of the content. It sounded incredible. Jace, walk us through some of the moments that were there. I know you took some photos, who you saw, and what the key themes were. Again, because from my understanding, and again, just from looking at the content, this really was the most influential people almost on the planet, not just in tech anymore. It's politics, it's tech, it's manufacturing, it's whatever it may be. These guys were all in one spot for the weekend you were there.
Yeah, it is. It's Roloff Botha who runs Sequoia. It's Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google. They had Tulsi Gabbard, obviously from the administration. They had some really interesting people like Triple H, who is now the chief content and creative officer at the WWE. I'm not a big
Love it.
wrestling guy, but it was fascinating to listen to him talk about the business. They have Ari Emanuel. Most people know Ari Gold from the show Entourage. His business is fascinating. They had the CEO YouTube, a lot of big names. But what was interesting was it was bucketed. They had some top science minds. That was one of the kind of tracks of speakers.
Mhm.
AI is obviously involved in everything, but they didn't coin it, but there is what I would describe a major theme of essentially quantum cities. Got to hear from Jam Sramek, who is the CEO of California Forever.
Mhm.
He gave a great, I think, inspirational speech for what they're doing there. It's in Solano County, which is near Sacramento. They have something like 60 to 70,000 acres of land. They have what I guess is the biggest or best suited shipyard where they're trying to bring back shipbuilding. They're doing a ton in advanced manufacturing, and he made a very compelling case for the future of manufacturing is going to be AI driven, and all the AI talent in the Bay Area is right there. So they're planning to generate something like 40,000 jobs in the area. They've got a lot that they're doing in advanced manufacturing. And his pitch was he moved from Eastern Europe. Essentially, he saw some of the impacts of the USSR back when he was a kid. And he put up an old ad for California back in the day and how nice it looked. And he kind of walked everybody through the issues that California has today. And look, you and I are East Coast guys. I'm not a California guy, but you couldn't walk away, uninspired from him saying, I love California. A lot of people are leaving. That's not what you do when you love something. You help build it back up and save it. He had a phenomenal presentation
Mm.
on reviving California as really being a place that people build. And I do think that's important for the country when you just think of the scale of California. So he was super impressive. California Forever is super impressive. I would say Kathy Wood from ARC,
Mm.
obviously she does a lot with ETFs and she is constantly long all things tech and AI. She had a really interesting presentation on the historical perspective and the present opportunity in the market. So she went all the way back to the steam engine and railroads, and she showed real GDP growth when you have these major innovative technologies that have changed society. And she did a great presentation on the confluence of kind of the mega trends when you think about 3D printing, robotics,
Mhm.
everything in hard tech with advanced by AI and intelligent devices, as well as some things in therapeutics, and then some things in one or two other kind of categories. And she basically showed that their perspective is that real, when you think about kind of the real growth that we had back during the internal combustion engine electricity era, almost touched 8%. And compared to today, they're predicting somewhere up to 17% growth based off of these mega trends of technology. So she was a
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating listen. And again, those trends are all the things that I think, bringing it back to Brookfield and the earnings reports that we covered a week or two ago. A lot of this is going to touch commercial real estate. I would say the crowd was lacking from a real estate perspective. Obviously,
Mhm.
you have people from a lot of different industries in that room, but I think it would be smart for them to get there because we also heard from founder of a company called Zipline, where,
Mhm.
talk about an inspirational presentation. The guy opens up with their drones in Rwanda are basically bringing blood transfusions to very rural parts of Rwanda. And we'll have to get the exact presentation. I might not have the stats right. Maternal mortality when you're having a child out in a remote area like that is scary high. And they brought down maternal mortality rates in the areas that they serve by something like 51%. So super
Yeah.
inspirational.
Insane.
He pivoted to, oh, by the way, these drones are also bringing Chipotle and things like that to people in the United States.
Both important.
Yep.
Both important.
Yep, they're doing it down south. He had great videos of families getting their food orders and things. They've got
Mm.
contracts with Walmart. And you just think about the impact this is going to have on cities if you don't have delivery services and full cars and all of this stuff jamming up the streets with congestion. And instead, we have drones dropping these things off. You can pinpoint to like a small like plot in your yard where you want it dropped and everything.
Insane.
It was wild. So in terms of the delivery economy, I think Zipline is going to have just major, major impact. Heard from Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir.
Absolute crazy,
Yeah,
crazy man.
and he was phenomenal in terms of talking about obviously all of the technological feats that Palantir has achieved. I think it was pretty timely. He also talked about being courageous in this day and age of speaking up for Western values. And obviously, with everything that happened with Charlie Kirk, I think super sad and depressing to see some of
Mm.
the reaction from some people to that. I think his speech will be listened to, and it's very poignant, happening a day or two before obviously that tragedy. And Carp, I mean, basically nobody could get a question in. He was just like he was there to say what he had to say. Super smart. There was a video with no speaker on a company called Dataland, which is doing some
Mm.
really interesting stuff in terms of 3D modeling of buildings, which I thought was cool.
Like that.
And then there was a whole track on crypto where they didn't specifically talk about real estate per se, but the head of Multicoin, which
Mhm.
he had a great presentation on the internet capital markets and just how broken the old rails are for the capital markets. And the CEO and founder of Solana was there, and it was good to hear just how much efficiency is going to be brought to essentially money. And when you just think about so many of the presentations over the last year from the big commercial real estate groups have been talking about unlocking high net worth and retail and these things. So if I was sitting in those businesses, I wouldn't necessarily have a crypto strategy, but I would be following very closely what crypto, and the CEO Robinhood also spoke. I'd be following kind of these trends and the new way of investing because at some point it's going to come into commercial real estate. It's not a question of if, it just is. So pretty much unbelievable. There was a ton that intersected
Hmm.
so I don't know if we want to talk Rick Caruso now or we want to keep plugging, but it was a phenomenal conference, and I would encourage everybody from real estate to start tuning in if they're not already, because all of these trends are coming to real estate.
It is an incredible event. What was your, just real quick, favorite moment? They talk about the parties, little inside track. What was it? You talked about the content, incredible. That's most important, right, for this pod and our listeners. But what was it like being there? And then what was your favorite was part? Was it as inspiring as it sounds? like just walking around, rubbing elbows with these individuals? And then were there any cool parties or run-ins with some guests or anything like that?
It's an incredibly diverse crowd. You get people from all different walks of life, different industry. Everyone kind of has that builder mindset,
Hmm.
which is why I think, real estate naturally intersects.
Yeah.
And it's not just your typical kind of Bay Area drone of the people who now
Right.
Brian Johnson, the Live Forever guy, did present, but you go out to the Bay Area. I was talking to somebody who went to lunch recently in the Bay Area, and he was like, "What is it? Everybody brings their own olive oil to their own lunch." And apparently that's something Brian Johnson tells people you need to do if you want to live forever. But it's a bunch of just super intellectually curious people in the crowd. They're all pretty much builders. They rented out all of Universal Studios, apparently on Tuesday night. I was on a red eye back, so I did not make it to that. But the parties were apparently very good. My father and I are East Coast early risers, so I didn't get the full experience of the parties. He's in his 70s and I'm 40, so I'm old. But I got to see some really interesting people, meet some really interesting people. I would encourage everyone to you learn a lot from the community there. So it was great.
Yeah, and their content is online. I've been digesting it. It's impressive. All right, good review, man. It's a hell of a week. Let's jump to some quick hits. We got some quick hits today. Number one, we talk about the theme of sort of the quantum review. We've reviewed a couple of cities and the importance of, call it, digital infrastructure, economic infrastructure. What about social media infrastructure? In Nepal, the prime minister banned social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and X for failing to register under laws. The youths had none of that. They burnt parliament. It's actually really intense. I don't mean to joke about it. They burned parliament and they dragged the prime minister through the streets in his underwear. Not what you want to see. Youths don't just want to use social media. That's not what they're protesting. They're protesting, obviously, government, certainly corruption, but more importantly, the notion of sort of censorship is my guess, and really the restriction of a critical piece of infrastructure in a developing city, a potential quantum city, and so on.
Yeah, look, I think what this highlights outside of all of the other topics that other people will cover in terms of the rise of populism and distress. Obviously, we've been seeing everything that's going on in France and other areas where there's turmoil. But I think digital infrastructure really isn't just down in the stack, it's also at the application layer. And I don't this is like the most obvious take, but it's clearly not smart to restrict people's access to information. And so I think when officials are thinking about digital infrastructure, I think it's going to be very hard to put the genie back in the bottle and take away access to these services and tools that everyone has grown to rely on. So I think as people are thinking about what infrastructure means in today's society, digital infrastructure is not just obviously the AI factories, but ultimately the freedoms people have to use those things.
And obviously super critical for any city. Next quick hit, Tesla's new RoboTaxi app. Tesla, obviously, Elon Musk, you have a Tesla that drives you around. Now you're actually going to have a RoboTaxi potentially
Mm.
drive you around. The app just launched. It's already one of the top apps in the App Store. Are people super excited about this? We talked about we were joking in one of the earlier shows about what happens, and this was specifically Uber and their investment into robo taxis. Do you tip? Do you tip Uber when it's just a computer driving you around? What's your take on this? Is this gimmicky? Waymo's having some success. Are we really there? You can follow App Store trends, but are we really there where we're going to be taking literal robo taxis? We're not going to be calling Ubers. There's not going to be people behind cars anymore. And why is this important for cities and city infrastructure?
Yeah, look, if I were in charge of a city, I'd be jumping on this. They had Waymos at the event. I haven't ridden in one yet, but it's real and it's here. It's wild to just see a car going around the building looking to pick people up. And I watched Waymo merge into what was just an insanely busy LA street. So, again, if I were in charge of policy in a city, which I'm very much not, and people keep telling me that, I would be trying to get ahead of this because quality of life is just going to be significantly higher with all things autonomous driving. I believe the Tesla RoboTaxi app jumped to number 6 in the App Store. We'll see if it has staying power. The future really is here. Between the zipline drones and autonomous driving, we have to lead on these things. And as someone who I have the Model 3, which is the cheap Tesla, and it's doing a very good job of driving itself. Although the rules and regulations have gotten way too tight, I think they're going to leapfrog cities that run fast on these things. And obviously, you have to be mindful of safety. But let's be honest, a computer that has 360-degree vision is going to be better than a human on its phone while driving. I think these cities are going to leapfrog others in terms of attracting young workers, and quality of life is going to be better in cities that lean into this and figure out how to make the infrastructure work really well for all of these advanced technologies.
Do you use, by the way, challenge accepted? I can drive way better than a robot. Challenge
No
accepted.
shot. No shot.
Challenge
I've
accepted.
driven
So
with you.
when my
You're
screaming
fine.
kids are in the car,
Fine.
do you use FSD? That's what it's called, full self driving, right? In the Tesla. Do you use it? Is it there? Are you scared? Do you trust it?
I used to use it all the time, but clearly the regulators have come in and
Huh.
like at this point that in at least in Massachusetts, it just beeps and yells at you the whole time. So I use it a little bit less. There's different tiers of it that yell at you less, but
Huh.
when it's free to operate, I mean, it's phenomenal and it doesn't make certain human errors. So when you look at deaths in just take America, it's like the driving is like the most dangerous form of major transportation. And
Yeah.
there's going to be a ton of improvement on that front that seems super obvious.
Speaking of Tesla, Mr. Musk, who was at All In, by the way, I think, right? I haven't
Wasn't
heard.
that, but he closed. So Dara, the CEO of Uber, spoke. Musk, Star LinkedIn or whatever he uses,
Of course, he's
he ended
Charlie.
the conference.
Of
We could
course.
do a whole show on Musk's segment. It's crazy. At one moment, the guy talked humanoid robot hands. At the next, he's talking about civilization on the moon or Mars. He talks about autonomous driving. He didn't even get to Neuralink or any of those things. And it's the breadth and depth is something else.
He is an impressive individual. However, not this week. Not this week. Not this week. So what happened this week, outside of being at the All In conference and probably saying some incredible things, Oracle stock jumped, what, 50%, almost 40% on Wednesday after they smashed their earnings, put guidance through the moon. Larry Ellison surged past Mr. Musk as the wealthiest billionaire on the planet. Larry Ellison owns still some, what, 40% of Oracle. His net worth increased over 100 billion in one day. That is insanity.
Yeah. Those factories are built on Oracle, it seems. Those AI factories. They seem incredibly well positioned. Larry is obviously a big investor in all of Elon's enterprises. He's an investor in other things. So he's compounding Oracle. He wins on all sides of this bet.
There was an incredible tweet. I was telling you about this yesterday that, oh no, it was a screenshot of the message between Musk and Ellison talking about Elon trying to take Twitter private. And he said, hey, listen, I have a round coming together. I want to make time. I want to make space for you. I'm not going to hold you anything, but how much you think? Larry just responds, I don't know, a billion or whatever you think is right.
Pocket change. And I think it's another one of the themes that I thought was impressive in terms of a lot of the people who are on stage talked, and obviously these people are incredibly wealthy and have benefited well from being in the kind of tech ecosystem. But one of the things that you and I have been working on for almost 20 years and talk a lot about is accessibility to this community. They all talked about how lucky and fortunate they were. Obviously, it's paired with hard work. And they all talked, I would say, pretty thoughtfully about how you bring these benefits to the broader population, and particularly how where you see a lot of the duress is from people thinking they don't have access to obviously the economic prosperity that's going to come from technology. And so I think people are being pretty mindful of, number one, creating a system that is fair, that everyone can participate in, and then number two, these technologies being used for the benefit of kind of everyday users. A lot of people bang the table and say Larry has too much money. It's a subjective topic, but I do think that I walked away pretty encouraged in terms of how thoughtful everyone is being around the impacts that AI is going to have more broadly beyond just the use cases.
We talk about OpenAI and name a number of the other AI companies as the darlings of the space. It's Oracle.
Yeah. Oracle is very well positioned, very well positioned. And another interesting thing, the head of the Nasdaq and the crypto people talked about is Oracle's publicly traded. You can go buy Oracle stock, which is great, but like a lot of the growth in these companies is still being held in the private markets, and at least in the states, we have laws that make it less accessible for everyday
Sure.
people to share in the upside of these.
Accredited investors and so
Yeah,
on.
yeah, million net worth excluding your house, which is a super small fraction of people. And there's a ton of thought being put in by, I would say, the people on the forefront of uh, both some of the policymakers and some of the technology folks in terms of how technology, the Robinhood CEO talked a lot about this, how you make those gains accessible to everybody, which I think when you think about one or two shows ago, we talked about how people feel about the American dream. I think the American dream can stay intact. The way that you achieve it needs to evolve with technology tools. And there's just a lot of smart people making sure and working super hard to
Mm.
try to bring those tools and access to these amazing companies like OpenAI and other things.
Which would be secondary shares, private market transactions, being
Yeah,
the Nasdaq
whether
has
it's through your retirement accounts or what Brad Gertzner of Altimeter, he was a champion behind putting $1,000 in an account that essentially indexes. I don't know if it was the S&P 500 or whatever, but it would very much outperform the way that people's money is being ultimately spent for them currently, and a lot of people would be better off. So there's just a lot of smart people thinking about how you share and Larry and others' success, which I think that's the American dream and spirit. So that was super cool to see.
I'd love to share in success of $100 billion jump, and
Yeah, now
you know,
some of
that's
that will not be accessible, but yeah.
I'll share some out, Larry. Anyways, let's keep moving. I watched this interview last night, and it was just insanity. Tucker Carlson is very well spoken, right?
He's a good debater.
He is great in front of camera, whether you agree or disagree with him. He is wonderful in front of camera. Sam Altman, who he interviewed, has his moments. He's a little bit more neurotic and nervous. Maybe not the best debater out there, but this interview specifically around the impact of ChatGPT, certainly everyone should go take a look at. But there's two real insane pieces, at least from my watching it, and then I'll kick it back to you. Number one, Sam Altman admitted he hasn't had a good night's sleep since ChatGPT went live.
Mm,
Whether or not I believe that might be a little bit
bigger
uh,
money, bigger problems.
yeah, okay, fine. Not because he fares, but just the weight of the impact of ChatGPT. The next one was the death of an OpenAI employee, researcher, and whistleblower. And this is where the interview gets absolutely must watch. An individual at OpenAI was a researcher. He was a whistleblower in the company, and he wound up dead. There's a lot of talk. There's certainly a lot of facts that's going out there. Tucker Carlson goes in to talk about and ask him, or maybe suggest, whether or not Sam Altman played a role in his death, because a lot of the evidence stacks up to look like murder. Sam Altman suggested that it was suicide. It certainly doesn't look like suicide. So you have, again, Tucker Carlson, one of the most influential media personalities, talking to Sam Altman, one of the most influential tech personalities on the planet, with obviously ChatGPT, more or less accusing him of murdering a former colleague and whistleblower at OpenAI. Insane.
Yeah. Look, I haven't watched the full interview. I've only read the commentary. Altman for going and having tough conversations. I don't know what to make of the whole situation, so I'm not going to be a sideline commentator on what did or didn't happen.
Just order and hits. Order and hits is what
Yeah,
it
I
sounds like.
mean, the authorities declared it a suicide, but apparently, like, the cameras were cut and all this stuff. I have no idea what's true and what isn't. I think it's good that we have dialogue about these things. Tucker is definitely a rabble rouser, I guess I would say. He and Cuban were on stage at All In. I don't know if Cuban agreed to that. Like, they brought,
That was it. I did listen to that one. That was also a fascinating interview.
yeah,
You're
and
right.
I think they could have done a better job of challenging Tucker on some of the stuff with Israel and the things that he says on that front. But Tucker comes super prepared. This is his profession. He is a professional arguer and debater. He kind of steamrolled everybody on stage, just took the mic and went.
Yep.
So, look, I think open dialogue is always a good thing. I think Altman literally said, he's like, this is the first interview where someone's tried to convict me of murder.
Accuse
That
him, not
seems
convict,
super
but accuse.
far-fetched to me. I don't know anything about it other than what I read.
I don't know. It looks like a hit. Looks like a Godfather-esque mob style hit.
I don't know. I don't know.
This is what it
I think
looks like.
I think the only conclusion I came to from all this is we live in some interesting times. We live in some interesting times. I do think that I think that my wife is in communications, and I think the communications people at OpenAI could coach Sam on. He comes off very calculated and all this. When you listen to Elon and some other people like Carp, they just come off very authentic. That's probably the
That's one way to describe Carp, authentic.
yeah, there's probably some, like, PR coaching
Yeah, he's a
that
robot.
can happen, but
He's a
I
robot.
think
Just
some of the ultra technologists are attracted to his positioning as, like, the chess player mastermind. But
yeah.
when he talks about Altman's comment about not getting a good night's sleep, look, they're out in front of what is the most competitive race on the
Mhm.
planet right now. And I was just looking at, I don't have the numbers at hand, but they need to, I think they're going to report something like 13 billion of revenue, but they've got a 300 billion dollar 5-6 year contract with Oracle.
Mhm.
They're spending tons and tons of money, and their next capital raise is said to be challenging in terms of, they're predicting, I think it's by 2027, 28, they'll go from 13 billion of revenue to 100, and then by 2030 they need to get to 200. That's a immense amount of pressure to grow, and pretty much everybody around them, whether it's Microsoft, the DeepMind CEO within Google, spoke it all in. Obviously, Elon is calling Sam a murderer and like crazy stuff on X.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to get them. So I believe him when he says he hasn't slept well.
And if you're a OpenAI employee right now, what's exciting is you have these two options, right? Like you can go to Facebook because Zuckerberg has made it clear that he wants to give you what are those offers? $100 million. He's
Mm.
offering $100 million
Yes,
pay
Zuckerberg's going
packages.
out there. Yeah.
So if you're an OpenAI employee, here's your paths right now. So you got 100 million from Zuck or a hit. You die. I don't know which what. That's the beauty of working at OpenAI right now. Or you stay and whatever, keep your mouth shut and do what Sam wants you to do. I
Yeah,
don't know. Whatever.
I
All
don't know what
hearsay.
to
I have
make of
no idea what the facts
I
are. I
don't know
don't
what
know.
to make of the Tucker stuff, but it is, again, it's fascinating times. That's for sure.
All right,
And
two more
glad
quick
to hear
hits.
about that researcher.
Yeah, two more quick hits. Local quick hit here. Hasbro moving its headquarters from Rhode Island to Boston, a 265,000 square foot lease. Phenomenal deal for the city of Boston. Obviously, this deal has been happening for a little bit. We got a little inside track on that deal. We've heard about it all summer because friends of the pod at Crescent actually worked on the deal. Derek Losey, Vicky Keenan, Jack Burns. Kudos to them. This is obviously a wonderful transaction.
Huge one.
250 plus thousand feet don't come around all that much. So it's a huge win for obviously the city of Boston.
Yeah, it's great to see because we haven't had there's a string of headquarters moving to Boston during the last tech
Yeah.
cycle. So it's good to see that Boston still has that kind of New England pull,
Yeah.
which is good. Robert Kraft's son just dropped out of the mayoral race, so it looks like it's Woo's again. I don't think Mayor Wu has been particularly friendly from a
Hmm.
business and commercial real estate perspective. If you remember, she was the mayor that wanted to increase taxes on commercial real estate when it was in the doldrums a year or two ago, which I did not think was a, a very smart policy. when you looked at the amount of tax base that commercial real estate contributes and the pressures they were under, that could have had a bad compounding effect. So it looks good that Hasbro's moving into town, and hopefully they've got teams of people clearly that are working on bringing business and jobs and opportunity into the city, which is desperately needed. Downtown is depressing. There are other
Yep.
neighborhoods that are doing well: Kendall, Back Bay, Seaport. But it feels a little bit like the last tech cycle that obviously raised the city up.
Love that. Last quick hit before we go in to our Rex section, and then one more bit of news. Rate cuts. Rate cut season appears to be here. PPI print came in at 2.6. CPI print came in at 2.9. Jobs numbers came in 22,000 jobs created, 4.3% unemployment. More importantly, the jobs revision, jobs were revised down over 900,000 from previous reportings. Challenging decision, and there's a lot of talk about it. We're looking at a 25 bip rate cut in September. Are we perhaps looking at a little bit of a larger, a 50 bip rate cut in September? What we're seeing, read a couple of newsletters. There's one awesome newsletter, Kenny Polcari writes a financial market newsletter. He said the market right now, from his standpoint of viewpoint, they're looking at 75 bip rate cut throughout the rest of the year. So you're looking at a September 25 bip, and then you're looking at follow-ups in October and December. Why is that exciting for commercial real estate or real estate as a whole?
Look, it was highlighted in Brookfield's investor presentation. Obviously, the rates coming down are going to help a lot of people out. Capital markets are back, I believe, was one of the big themes of Brookfield's presentation. And a lot of it is due to rates and the historical rise in rates. It's a levered industry. The PPI print, which it's the producer price index production, coming in at 2.6. The target was 3.3, I believe. So that's surprisingly low. I forget what the target on CPI was, but it's still a 2 handle compared to 3, which a lot of people, I believe, have talked about it going up above 3. So it's just fascinating to see what's happening with what impact or lack of impact tariffs are having. I still think we need more data. But I think what's overall highlighted with the jobs revision and, ultimately how we track this data, that was another theme at All In, is we need to modernize how we handle the data, right? So that we can get more accurate. It's very hard if you're any sort of central bank anywhere in the world, whatever, to work with such imperfect data, right? And it is unfortunate to see it getting politicized and all this both ways. For commercial real estate, anything that can bring a little relief, people can get their debt sorted. I think 2026 should be in a good place.
Hopefully it unlocks the residential market as well. Obviously, with rate cuts, you could assume that mortgages and mortgage rates will start to decrease. As it is, you're starting to see week over week mortgage apps surge. So good sign. There's potentially a housing crisis, which we talked about. There isn't a housing crisis. It's a quality housing crisis, but let's hope the affordability is there. Okay, let's get to Rex U before we get to one more bit of news. Rex U, if you're a follower of the newsletter, which we send each week, sign up. We'll figure out how to get that in the YouTube show notes or the comments. We talk about a conference Strata, that we are hosting coming up October 16th. Should be pretty exciting. We have a phenomenal list of attendees already. We got a phenomenal list of speakers, a couple more speakers that we're confirming. We got a VIP reception happening the night before. We're partnering with somebody to host that. Tell me a little bit about Strata, Chase. What excites you about it? We partnered with MIT Center for Commercial Real Estate. Again, there's some info in the newsletter. You want to break some news today? You want to talk about some attendees? You want to talk about some panelists, some of the speakers that we got? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, look, we've got a great lineup. As you mentioned, it's October 16th, happening in Kendall Square at the right at the heart of MIT. MIT's Center for Real Estate does a great job on, I think, really covering the intersection of these mega trends as they come into real estate. We're pumped. We have Travis Kalanick, which many people know from Uber, but what he's been doing in cloud kitchens and city storage systems over the years is a quiet force. I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to what they've been building over the last, it's not quite a decade, but since he left Uber. So he's going to be our keynote. We've got some other great
Let me get
speakers.
that straight. You have Travis Kalanick lined up
Yeah.
as a keynote for
Yeah,
Travis.
he's
Travis Kalanick.
gonna be the keynote, which is awesome. If anyone has heard him speak recently, he's got some what I would say some incredible views on the intersection of technology and commercial real estate. He is in commercial real estate. Obviously he's done transportation. When he left Uber, it was an incredibly high percentage of rides in San Francisco that were happening through Uber. So when you think about quantum cities and really leveling up the infrastructure of the city, I'm not sure there's anybody better in the world at that kind of intersection of bits and atoms than Travis Kalanick. So he's going to come and speak. We've got some top tier speakers from Goldman Sachs, Bedrock out in Detroit. We've got some really great people on the technology front that we'll be announcing this week when the pod comes out, along with some other folks from, again, across tech and real estate. And the MIT folks have been kind and generous to partner with us, which
Yep.
we're excited about. And the audience, I think, is just as exciting.
We have over 100 confirmed attendees so far. It's a free event, by the way. It's
Yeah, this
gonna
one's on
start.
us. This one.
This one's on us. Next one is on you guys.
Yeah.
We don't have room for a ton more, so get in RSVP. But we have
Yeah, we can only have 200 people. We already have over 100, and it's
super curated.
top level people from commercial real estate, and a bunch of tech and AI people.
Yeah, name drop, C-levels, Tishman, Silverstein, Beacon, BXP, partnering with them for something special, Cadillac Fairview, Hines, Vornado, Cressa, RXR, you name it. We're curating an incredible audience to mingle with. We have a lot of folks flying in for this. And then we're also curating a wonderful, obviously, speaker list. And there'll be some additional programming throughout the day. So it's a Thursday is the event. There'll be some additional programming for a handful of folks that come in early on Wednesday. And then, of course, going into Thursday evening. We haven't had a large event like this since COVID. We've done a handful of smaller events. We're super excited about this. Again, we very much believe in person, and this is a really exciting time to come together to host a conversation about the future of the built world, which we're excited about. And again, we have some really good speakers. Check it out, RSVP. The links will be in the YouTube, and the links will obviously be in the newsletter. One more bit of news this week, the best section on the pod. More than one more bit of news. That's obviously the running joke. We always have one more bit of news. So we only got a few minutes. So let's talk real quick. Apple did their launch. They do that fanfare. Although it sucks, to be honest, now. I was comparing obviously Tim Cook and Steve Jobs, and there's nobody that can replicate Steve Jobs on stage. But thinking about when they announced the iPhone, and one more thing. And then I saw they were comparing the announcement when they launched the iPad Air. It was in a manila folder next to him. It's just absolutely incredible. Cool. Whatever. So they came out with a bunch of new phones that are super thin. I don't even know where my phone is. Like, the last thing we need is a thin phone because this is already smashed. But what was exciting to me, and then we'll talk about what's exciting for you, is the AirPods. The new AirPods can now translate live different languages, which for me is important because I went to see one of our customers in Paris, Crimea, and I love them, and they're wonderful. They obviously speak French, and their feedback to me and HQO was she wishes I was a little less American and that I spoke French, which I do not. I'm going to obviously take some classes, but now I don't need to because my AirPods will translate live. Now,
yep.
I then can't speak French.
You're now more French.
So I don't know.
The fact that the big announcement, I know some people like the thin phone, but I was just horribly underwhelmed.
No, don't care about that.
AirPods drive me crazy. Apparently there's something that like helps it stay in your ears. I don't know. We're watching look, a lot of these companies, Microsoft turned it around and figured it out. I do think Apple's missing on AI. They seem to have lost the innovation and creativity engine over there. So I think they're going to need to do something. OpenAI has a hardware product apparently coming out next year with Johnny Ive.
Puck, right?
Famously from Apple. I couldn't have been more bored.
Whatever. Who cares? Who cares? The new phone came out. You can all waste your money on it. Two more bits of news. This one's wild. K-pop. We talked about K-pop. K-pop is it's just obviously K-pop demon.
Critical part of the show. Critical part of the show.
Critical part of the show. Kion, if you haven't seen
who that
is an AI created K-pop star. Kion's an AI created K-pop star that has landed $50 million in contracts, $50 million in contracts, an AI pop star. Now there's somebody behind singing, right? I do know that, I
Yeah.
think. What does this mean for the entertainment industry? AI created K-pop stars can land $50 million contracts. I'm going to create a bunch of K-pop stars right now and send them to all the agencies I know and try to land a $50 million deal. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, we got out of media at the wrong time, maybe. I don't know. This was not one of the topics covered. So I would have loved to hear Ari Emanuel talk about
Yeah.
repping the AI star. I'd love to know what that means. But they did talk about the absolute explosion in content production. Emanuel claims that we're going to a 3-day work week because Elon's robots are going to do work and we don't have to work, which I don't totally buy. But maybe we should all just get into we should obviously all be making K-pop stars, although I don't know if I have that skill set. So I'm going to have to up level myself. But 50 million, man, we might be in the wrong business.
Last bit of news this week, we talked about Brookfield being a whale. Brookfield's a whale, seeing obviously wonderful returns. We talk about the Mag 6, the Mag 7, Facebook or Meta. The best investment, though, not NVIDIA. It's not Meta. It's not the S&P. So Meta, since going public, saw a 1,844% return. Not bad. Put some money in there. You made some money.
Not too bad.
The S&P since 2004 saw a 483% return. So fine, okay, decent, not bad. Brookfield had whatever percent return you quoted earlier. The best investment, right up your alley, because you're a big collectible guy, I know that, Pokemon cards. Pokemon cards have seen a roughly 3,821% cumulative return since 2004. Pokemon cards, which if you go up to my two kids, they share a room, or 3 kids, but the 2 boys, they share a room. There's fucking Pokemon cards everywhere, all over the floor right now. Not anymore. I went up there and I started laminating them. I started taking pristine care of them. We're talking about 3,000% return here, man.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I've always been a big supporter of the collectibles market. It's an obvious value proposition that I totally understand.
Obvious trade.
I've never said anything to the contrary, and I get and fully support collectibles. My kids have Pokemon cards because the neighbor down the street was like, I'm too old for these. He just came and dropped them off.
And yet he's sitting on 3,800% return right there.
Yeah, K-pop stars, Pokemon cards, like you and I everybody talks about AI and being worried about jobs. I don't know. I need to understand these markets. Like I'm clearly woefully behind.
Pokemon cards to win. Great show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate it. Keep the feedback coming. Thanks so much. Subscribe to the newsletter. We're excited about our event coming up in October. Thanks for coming out.
Rata, get in now.